once again, if we've been moving too quickly with you with Brittany and Kyle and all the things we've talked about, you can contact us and we'll let you know more about that later. And at the end of each segment, you see there's even a post office box where you can write questions and whatever. If we've gone very fast, there's a lot to know about all this, but let me just stress this one point. Begin to be collectors of rocks and minerals, or as we're focusing here, on fossils. A fossil is anything that was living that is now dead. Well, it has fossilized, which means sand has got in there and replaced every part there is. Now, if the sand is gentle in replacing, you'll have the exact shape. For example, there's a nice little piece of petrified wood. It's not really nice. It's a big chunk. This is the kind of petrified wood that people like to see a lot, but yet it still doesn't have all those pretty colors in it. But notice how it looks like the wood. It's got the pieces, stepped down and the whole things. So, of course, that's your petrified wood. Is about the best as you can see it. And it's no longer wood. It is rock through and through. Now let's get back to our chart. In our chart, we have seashells. Now, we talked about that. We talked about the fact that they're extinct. Let me give you two examples of that. And you'll notice I have actually written on here little numbers. We have S7 and there's an 8. That's not important to see that. But the idea is that when you take and start your collections, you never know what you got. So you have to go to the books or go to people who know, because after all, this shell looks like something very common to me. I've seen these on the beach, but this particular species, which is known by its number of bands, is become extinct. And this one here looks very common to me. Looks like a cockle, but yet the grooves are extremely deep on it, and that particular species is no longer existent or to be found on the beaches of Florida. So that's what makes fossil collecting even more exciting, when you can find things that no longer live. The rib of the manatee, that was nice, but you see we have manatees today. But when you find a piece of the mammoth femur, the upper leg bone, then you've got something really neat, because that animal doesn't live anymore. Now I got to remind you, if you want to do things like that, there are areas in Florida where we find a lot of fossils. You say, well, can't they have all been gathered up and taken off? A lot of them have, but there's a lot of local universities. In fact, there's a local creation research group that actually sponsors little tours. You meet them there, and like 100 kids and their parents show up, and they take you on a fossil hunt. Absolutely exciting. You get dirty, you're muddy, and you're soaking wet, but you actually get to take some of the fossils home with you, especially when it comes to things like shark teeth. Oh, I'm telling you, when it comes to shark teeth, you talk about varieties. I have never seen so many varieties. Well, sharp point, rounded, triangular shape, small, large, those with little hooks on them. See it? Now, each of these teeth, of course, belong to a shark. But do you know anything about sharks? They can look at these teeth and tell you if it's from the white tip, the black tip, the giant white shark was here, and the various kinds of sharks. I don't know my sharks that well, but these are teeth from different types of sharks, because what I've got here is examples of each type of shark. Instead of having, why would you want 50 teeth of the same shark? Now, you might want the tooth that's found near the back, and one to the side, and one to the front, upper and lower. Those are all different looking. So you might want to do that kind of a collecting. But when you find an actual big area of nothing but piles of shark teeth, you don't need to take a shovel and scoop it all up, because what are you going to do with it? You're not allowed to sell them. That's not legal. So what you want to do is just take examples of them and then leave it for someone else. Now, when you go on these hunts and you pick up something from a mammal, then you're not allowed to take those home unless you show your permit. And if you show the permit, of course, everything is fine and sort of, as you say, legal. Now, there's other things you can find. I have seen fossil fish where you find the whole fish stuck in a rock. You've seen that, right? Well, here's some fish parts. Those are fish parts. Yeah. This one here is the upper lip of a stingray. Well, that's not a fish, but it's a stingray. And this one is the upper lip of a blowfish. You know that one that gets a pufferfish? And this is shall we say, like a chest bone of a species of fish, which is still even here today. These are not extinct. You do have blowfish. You still have the stingray. But these are neat because these are fossil. And well, look how tiny those are. And you say, how did you ever figure out who's who? Well, there happens to be some books available on that. Number two, you find an expert. Because when you go on these trips, he tells you what you have. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And you take field notes. Now, let's go back to our chart. And let's take a look at some thoughts that I have here. These are different kinds of shark pieces that I have. We got a snaggletooth shark. I never knew there was a snaggletooth shark. I thought it was a snaggletooth was something else. Great white shark. Tiger shark. Yeah, I heard of that one. White tip shark. Sand shark. Yep, yep, yep. And then there's the word shark vertebrae. Let me show you the shark vertebrae. Shark vertebrae, by the way, is very, very popular with Indians around the United States who were near the seashore, because you can actually drill a hole through some of these, and when you drill a hole through it, you can wear it. You can actually wear it like a necklace. And so those, of course, be very popular. No, it's okay. Let's take a look at this chart. It's going to be sideways to you, but that's okay, because I just want to show you what you do to begin with. You make a rough sketch. See? I've named everything, labeled everything. You do that as soon as you can, maybe as you're in the campsite where you're doing your work to be done, but you've got to do it as quickly as possible so that you don't forget what you have, because we call it field notes, because you want to be able to write down immediately what the man tells you. You don't want to go back up there again. I know that's what you kids do a lot. You say, what was that? What was that? What was that? So get your field notes as quickly as you can. Or another way, of course, play a tape recorder. Put the guys near him, you know, and let him find out, you know, let him talk, and then you got all a nice little tape recorder. I did that one time about something I thought I surely was going to forget, and I got some real nice information, and I could play it back on tape. Now let's take a look at this next chart. Why do these animals exist here in Florida like they did? Well, Africa and southern Florida used to be connected together. Just leave it at that. That's a whole nother story. Now, as things changed on the earth, animals would come out of the Central America and come north. You could actually walk from Central America to Cuba. There was dry land a long time ago, all right? And the animals, therefore, could walk it. You could walk from Cuba over to Florida. You could walk out to the Bahamas. Gee, maybe that explains why these places all look alike. But now you get down to the West Indies, into the Virgin Islands and Grenada, then you have something completely different. You got volcanic islands. So every time the earth changed, cold ice caps came in or whatever, the animals migrated, they packed up and left, whatever the case may be. We had in Florida a giant ground sloth, and we saw his picture earlier. There still is a ground sloth, but he lives in South America, and he's only about this big. You know, he's a nice little furry animal, hangs upside down the tree and sleeps a lot. That's what's left of it. All right, now let's take a look at this next one. This drawing is a hippo, or rhinoceros type thing, and an elephant. This is a modern day elephant. These lived in Florida. Now the question is, why aren't they here anymore? Well, you see, Florida is quite small. And when the oceans separated and moved around a lot, what happened is that the weather changed and Florida became smaller, and therefore the animals had a lot less grazing land. And since they had very little grazing land, they of course ran out of food, and the whole species just died out. Well, if you have any questions about what I'm talking about or whatever, you can contact me. For those of you who know American Online, you know, that's the email address. Just type it as you see it. And that little funny thing there means @ and you have to type that on there. And if you want to look at the website, which is updated every month, it'll talk about things to do and see and ideas for science. So that's how you can get in touch with us. Or at the end of this series, you can see, of course, there's a post office box. Let's get back to our no, let's not do that. No, I almost forgot. A must-see place. A place you got to see. There are 2 museums. There it is, a must place to see. There are 2 museums. One is in Palm Beach, and the other one is, have you ever heard of Mulberry, Florida? I hadn't until I checked it out. Let's take a look at this first tape I was able to get a hold of. And look, This is a real, honest-to-goodness, woolly mammoth, and all of its parts are there. Any part they couldn't find was built by man and then added to the entire skeleton. Isn't that awesome? There it is in a museum in Palm Beach. Now, it may not be there forever and ever and ever. A lot of these museums will build an exhibit, and they transfer it to another museum, or they take it apart and put it down inside the storage. If you go to Gainesville, Florida in particular, I remember there, they have the Geological Museum. They have more things downstairs in the basement and the drawers than they do upstairs. Because upstairs being the fact that they have some things on display while everything else, of course, is in storage. And if you're really interested in this kind of thing, you can always talk to the curator, the guy in charge of exhibits, and maybe he'll take you downstairs. Let me show you this other place. Totally awesome. This has been opened recently. It recently is because it was open once, and they closed it down, and now it's reopened again. There's a horse. This is really nice. They put it in the ground almost like they see it, like you would actually find it. Isn't this spectacular? A rhinoceros. Look, ancient. I love that word, ancient. Rhinoceros. And look at all the bones, fragments, and parts. See, they didn't have enough to put it all together. They got a lot of leg bones and things, but they didn't get enough to put a whole woolly mammoth bone remains, it says there. See it, mastodon and woolly mammoth. Also, you need financing. You have to have funding from people to put all these things together, and you have to have the expert who knows exactly what he's doing. I'm coming over here to show you, right here, this video was able to show me what the different animals looked like when they actually lived on the earth. Look at this. They actually lived here in Florida. Now you have to go to the zoo. In fact, of course, some of these don't even exist anymore. Now, what's really interesting is that about fossils, you have to be very careful with them. Like this is fossil here.